Welcome, yoga teachers. In case you missed our first episode, Gathering Threads, our origin story, the purpose of our podcast is to help you, fellow yoga teacher, elevate your classes with weekly episodes to provide you valuable insights and techniques to help you craft your yoga classes around specific intentions. We promise to help you transform your teaching with confidence so that you can leave a lasting impact on your yoga students. Welcome to Theme Weavers, your weekly wisdom for weaving yoga themes into your classes in 10 minutes or less. We're your hosts, Heidi
and Farin.
Today, we are jumping straight into the why behind weaving themes and the importance of threading intention into your yoga classes. This episode is for you if you ever find that you don't have time to read and research yogic texts, you don't feel wise, you don't feel experienced enough as a yoga teacher, you lack knowledge, you lack time to research, you lack time to plan your classes, either because of other responsibilities or you're hustling from class to class to class.
Theming and using philosophy in your classes that you teach is so important. Your transformation will be from a scattered yoga teacher winging it, not really feeling connected to the teachings of yoga, nor to your students. And by listening to our Theme Weavers episodes, you will become a confident yoga teacher who uses ancient wisdom to inspire your classes of modern day yogis. By learning to use themes based in the yogic texts and philosophies, you'll become a better teacher without needing to scroll endlessly for inspo, hey Instagram, so that your students gain value from your classes. You know that you will learn to confidently deliver a kick-ass yoga class without coming up with a theme out of thin air on your own, especially if you have no time to plan.
What are you going to do with all that time without having to scroll Instagram?
I'm still going to scroll Instagram. Some other things.
Struggle is real. So real. Okay. So we've talked to you a lot about like the importance of theming. We're kind of, hammering that into you. But
Yes.
How do you actually theme? So Farin and I have a method that we have crafted with help of our teacher trainings, especially with the help of the Yogi Mat's 300-hour teacher training. And we want to share with you our method and step-by-step process of weaving a theme into your classes.
It's so good. It's so good. So listen closely.
We're going to give you a little best template. Okay. What's the first thing that you do when you weave a theme into your class?
Introduce the theme.
Oh my God. How many times have you seen that people forget to actually introduce the theme and they just start talking like you know what they're talking about?
Or they just start teaching. And I'm like, wait, are we not setting an intention? Are we just moving our bodies? Like, where's the yoga?
I mean, you'll still gain something just by moving your body, but like it really helps to introduce what we're doing here. It doesn't have to be fancy, but you need to introduce it. And after you introduce it, sometimes teachers, I find, they start to talk about themselves, which is not a bad thing. You want your students to relate to you and to feel a connection to you. But you want what you're talking about to really demonstrate a very relatable problem that multiple people have in their lives. You want to be able to introduce a problem that you are then going to be able to solve for your students. And you don't want it to be so specific that the people in the room have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, or they look at you and they're like, sounds like a personal problem, bro.
Right. Like and here's the thing, like you're going to deliver a problem that is going to solve for your students, but you need to like get your stuff together first. You can't just talk about a problem that you're going through in this moment that you're like either actively working through in therapy or actively avoiding working on. Like
your classes are not your therapy sessions. Like it's not for you.
Wait,
It's
say
not
that
for you as a
again,
teacher.
Farin. Say it again.
Your
That's so
classes are not your therapy sessions. This is for your students, right? The themes are delivered for your students, not for yourself. I mean, of course you're going to benefit, but it's not therapy.
It's something that you have worked through though, right? Like if I deliver a theme that is so vague and ambiguous in my life that it makes no sense to me, it's going to make no sense to my students. So you need to deliver the theme. So you introduce it and then you need to discover what the problem is that it's solving for people. Otherwise it's meaningless, right? So it has to be something that you've either experienced or that you see happening in a lot of your students, right? And I'll give you an example, and this isn't the example I'm going to use in a minute, but I often see students looking around throughout classes constantly, like looking at what other people are doing on their mats. And sometimes it's because maybe I'm not doing the best job teaching something, but often it's because they do a lot of comparison, right? They think that like I'm not as good as the person next to me, and they're just constantly looking around to get this idea of like who's doing it better.
Yes.
And that's a problem, right? That is a problem that I have. That's a problem that other people have had and that I see in the room. And maybe it's not a problem that I'm dealing with anymore, but I definitely have had comparisonitis in my life.
Oh, I still
It-
do that even when I practice. Guilty.
I mean, it's a thing and it's a problem. But if I can't explain why it's a problem, why is that a problem, Farron?
Because it's not yoga. The yogic texts tell you that you basically have to stay on your own mat, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. That's like not really yoga. That's a quote that somebody else said, but it still relates. Um,
No, but it is real yoga because what we do is then we take that and relate it to the text. And there is a yama,
Truth.
right? And an ethical principle that tells you not to steal, right? And
Yeah.
stealing, you just said the word thief, right? Like that is stealing. So you got
Yes.
to figure out the problem, right?
The
And you
one
got
that
to
I
relate
use
it.
for that is Astea. I always say Astea on your mat.
Of course you do. Have we mentioned that we're total dorks?
Hey, my students laugh at my jokes still, so when they stop laughing, I'll stop saying it.
Yeah, I mean, that's because you're you, right? You're authentically you. Okay, so you introduce the theme. You got to talk about the problem it's going to solve for your students. And then it's really important to talk about the challenges that might arise for you when you're practicing the teaching, right? It's not like, hey, we have a problem it's going to solve, and then ta da, you practice this and you solved it. It's hard. This work is
Yes.
hard. Some are harder than others. And you're going to come up with challenges, right? So the example we just talked about, not comparing yourself to other people, what's a challenge that might arise for you when you're trying to practice this?
You can't stop doing it. You're still looking around.
Yeah. Or like you could kind of do it in a class and all of a sudden you turn on that Instagram that you're not supposed to be looking at and you see other teachers doing what you practice in class and you're like, "God damn it, why can't I do that?" Right? Like
Yes.
it's a challenge. This is hard. It is
It's
hard
hard.
work. But once you work through that challenge, right? You've introduced the theme, you talked about the problems it solved, you talk about the challenges that are going to arise for your students because let's face it, it's real life. That's going to happen. Then you need to highlight the results of the teaching to keep your students inspired, right? You need to tell them, but if you practice this and you work through all these challenges, look what's going to happen to you. You're going to have this blissful experience of being in your own lane, a stay in your own lane, right? You're going to do the work and you're going to feel transformed and so much better. It's important.
Yes. And to take that theme off of your yoga mat and like into your real life. I always tell my students that at the end of my classes is like, hey, this doesn't just apply during your physical practice. This is like a life practice.
Yeah, yoga is not just the time that you spend on your mat. In fact, that's like a tiny little portion. There's 24 hours in a
Mhm.
day. One of them might be spent on a yoga mat if you're so lucky. So that leaves you 24 other hours. And of course, you're sleeping on top of that.
23.
Oh
Yoga
my
math, Heidi.
God, yoga
23 around.
math. Okay, my daughter is in advanced math. I went to a math tutor. I clearly don't have these same skills. Thank you, Karen.
My son does mental math faster than I do, and he's 11, so it's all good.
All right, it gets better through the generations, maybe. So you have all these other hours in a day to practice yoga. Wrap up your mat and take it in, live it, right? And I
Yes.
think like this way to be able to do that easiest is by having something called a thematic through line, which Farron will talk about in detail a little bit later. But we learned this from the yogi mat and chromatic yoga. A thematic through line is a phrase that you're going to weave throughout the class to create a complete tapestry of the theme. You'll weave this simple and repetitive phrase through the entire practice to help your students remember and deepen their connection to the theme you introduced. We talked about this a little bit in the last episode. I'm going to quiz Farron in a minute. But we know it can feel really funny to repeat the same thing over and over. Like we've all felt that. Like we are a broken record and then you feel weird,
Mhm.
right? But research has taught us that there's a magic number of how often people need to see and hear a message before it sinks in. Farron, drum roll if you please. Do you remember from our last episode where I only said it twice? What's the magic number?
It's 7. 7 times.
Yes. People need to see a message at least 7 times before it sinks in. This supports the idea that people learn and therefore remember by repetition. So we need to do that as educators in the yoga classroom as well, even if it feels funny to us as teachers.
And it's
All right.
kind of like like a sun salutation A, right? Like the first time you teach it to a class, they're not going to know the whole sequence. They have to do it maybe 7 times. And then they're like, oh, okay, I get all the postures in the sun salutation A. And then you move on to B. So, yeah, it's just like repeating what you say to cue your students into different postures, but you're cueing a thematic through line instead.
I love that. I love that. And knowing this
Mm.
gives you a little bit of permission and space to feel a little bit extra repetitive. I
It's
mean, as a
okay to drop
student,
the hammer.
yes, drop that hammer over and over and over at least 7 times. And here's the thing, how many classes have you been in as a student and you cannot remember what on earth the teacher just said 2 seconds ago? Because you're in your own
Oh, yeah,
experience.
absolutely. I'm always in my head.
Always, always. So they got to say it over and over because maybe you'll catch at least 2 of them.
Yes.
All right, so let's give you an example. We sort of talked about Asteya a second ago, and it might be helpful if Farron and I walk through this with you. So let's talk about the first sutra, right? Sutra 1.1. What is that? Do you remember?
Hatha Yoga Nusasanam.
Nusasanam? Yeah, Nusasanam. Okay.
Hatha Yoga Nusasanam. Yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you for consulting the text. It's super important. Okay. Yoga Sutra 1.1. And in English, that translates to.
Yoga is now.
Okay. So let's do this together. Farron, step 1, introduce the theme. You're in front of a class. What's your theme?
Yoga is now. No.
Repetition.
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Yeah, so I would say like this is Yoga Sutra 1.1. It's the very first teaching of yoga. And in Sanskrit, Hatha Yoga Nusasanam means yoga is now. So what does that mean for us? That's how I would introduce my theme.
Lovely. So I think the next thing that you step into is, what problem does it solve for your students in their life? What does it solve? Being in the now, yoga is now. What problem is that going to solve for you?
If you've heard of that thing called monkey mind, basically your mind is being pulled in just every different direction. You can't stay focused on one thing. Then just remembering that yoga happens now. Yoga is right now. Stay in this moment. It'll help you to get out of that monkey mindset and focus on just what's happening right now.
Do you know why it's called a monkey mind?
I don't know.
Because monkeys swing from tree to tree, just like our thoughts swing from
Oh,
thought to thought.
oh,
Yeah,
that's
monkey
so
mind.
good.
Swing,
How come I
swing,
never
swing,
knew
swing.
that?
I can't believe you didn't know that. Have we
I
not talked about that?
I don't know.
Well, now you know. Now so does everybody else. I'm so glad I could enlighten you. Okay,
Yeah,
so we've addressed our theme. Yoga is now. We've addressed the problem. Monkey mind. You're pulled in every direction. What challenges might arise for you when you're practicing this teaching?
distraction. You're just not able to do it. There's that monkey mind. You're swinging from thought to thought to thought.
Right, you're in a
And
yoga class and you hear like a bang outside the room. What do you think that is? Oh shoot, I have to do this after class and I forgot to write it down. How am I going to remember to go to the grocery store? I forgot to send my kid to school with this or that. And oh, breathe, breathe. Now I'm in triangle.
yeah,
Great.
exactly.
We know the problem. We know the challenges. Now we need to highlight the results of the teaching to keep your students inspired.
When we still the fluctuations of the mind, we can be present in the moment that we're in, even if it's just for one breath, because you're still in the moment, at least for that long. And then you continue to practice that over and over and over again. And then, hey, guess what? You're mindful. You're
Yeah.
here right now, just like
And
yoga is right now.
yeah, and you're not failing. I love to tell my students, you're not failing. If you have to over and over come back to now, I am now, I am now, this inhale is now, and then there's the grocery store, and then I'm now again. You can begin again and
Yes.
again and again, and it's not failure, it's practice.
That's why yoga is a practice, not a perfect.
Love your little phrases. So speaking of phrases, Farron, now you get to your next step is to pick out a phrase that you're going to weave through the class to create a complete tapestry of your theme, your thematic through line. So what example can you think of for this?
Yoga is now.
Yes, yoga is now. Come back to the breath in the moment you are in. How many times do you need to say that at least?
7,
Yeah, and do you say it like 18 million different ways?
probably.
Yeah, that's okay. But you want to drop the hammer over and over. Bang, bang, bang. Yoga is now. Boom. Yoga is now. Boom. Come back to the breath in your moment you're in. Boom. Right?
Yes. I think it's cool
Mm-hmm.
to alternate between like maybe like 2 different thematic phrases that have like the same theme. That way you're not like super repetitive, but say each of them 7 times. So yeah, yoga is now. Come back to your breath. Yoga is now. come back to the moment. Yoga is now, just over and over and over.
It's kind of, I'm totally digressing, but this is what we do. It's kind of like when teachers say the word breathe in and breathe out over and over. You're like, oh my God, I'm breathing in and out. But if you vary the way that you say it, like take a big breath in, slowly let it out, fill your lungs, empty your lungs. You're saying the
Mhm.
same thing. You're telling them to breathe, but the little tiny bit of variety helps them pick up on a little bit of a difference. And it helps you not feel quite as repetitive, even though you're saying the exact same thing because they're all breathing.
And it helps to keep them in the moment. It's part of this whole practice.
Yes, yes, I
Yes.
love that. So I think we're sort of getting this point to you. It's so important when we weave our themes throughout the entire class, not just at the beginning and the end, because when you drop it at the beginning and then you never come back to it with that thematic through line, the students lose the connection. What was it they were talking about again? Why is it so important? You
Mhm.
have to keep coming back to it and then end it
Yes.
again by coming back to it, right? It's like a full package.
Yeah, you have to just, like, tie up the bow at the very end.
Zoop, tie it up. Yep.
Tie it up. All right. So there are additional supports for weaving themes that I'd like to dive into now. So you don't just have to reference a yoga sutra and then just find your thematic through line and then teach from that. You can also enhance the theme weaving with a lot of other things. You can find a corresponding quote. You can figure out a peak posture that matches in some way the teaching, what you're trying to theme off of.
Could you
You
give me
can
can you give me an example of that? And also, what is a peak posture? Not everybody teaches that
Ooh.
way.
Ooh, okay. So a peak posture is like the, let's say climax, because I can't think of another word. It's the climax of your class. It's what you're leading up to. So all of your postures prior to that, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them are going to help set your body up for that peak posture. So physically, say you want to get into dancer pose. So it's a balancing posture. So you're going to practice balancing before you get up to that peak posture. There's kind of an open chest because you're reaching back with one hand in dancer. So some of your other postures are going to start to open the chest.
Yeah, layer these postures through to get you ready for it. But now that we know what a peak posture is, let's use dancers. Dancers
Mhm.
is about balance, right?
Yeah.
So maybe what theme could you possibly have that would tie to that peak posture of dancers?
I think Asteya is actually one of the ones that I use for dancer because it's so easy to just look around the room and see people in like huge backbending dancers and they're like able to hold it for forever and they just look like so beautiful and you're like, I don't look like that. Or you're just finding that comparison and you're not staying on your mat. You're really just looking around the room and seeing all these different beautiful dancer postures. And so I think that that works perfectly with that theme is like this is a real practice because it's going to be so tempting to look around at everybody else, but can you just stay focused on what you're feeling in your body?
I love that. And the fun part is that we will be providing like a billion other themes that can also relate to either that same pose or any other
Yes.
balance pose. Because I can come up with, off the top of my head, at least 10 other really cool ones, which now you're going to have to keep listening to find out.
Yes.
Okay, Farron. So we talked about these cool examples of quotes, peak postures. What else do we have that we can help support our theming with?
Next up is our layering postures. So, just like I was talking about how we get into that peak posture by helping to open up the body or, stretch something or strengthen something in order to get to it, these are the perfect opportunities to also layer in your thematic phrase. So, that phrase that you are dropping the hammer on and just boom, 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 this is what it is. You weave that into your layering postures all the way up to your peak posture. You can also use your playlist. I know that not all yoga teachers teach to music, but if you do, if that is what is going on in your studio and you can use your playlist to further enhance that theme by finding songs that have to do with your theme or even say part of your thematic phrase. Oof, that's like the best. When
Right?
you're
Like if
able to
you're
find those
doing
little
that,
gems.
right? Like that yoga is now, and you're talking about the breath being now and the like song Just Breathe or something like that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Or if your theme is breath and being now, can you maybe not use music at all and say that your breath
Oh.
is your music and you have to come back to the sound of each inhale and exhale to stay in the now? And when you get distracted by sounds outside, come back to the sound of your breath.
That's a good one. I
Mhm.
like
Little
it.
gem.
Yeah. And then beyond that, you can even weave in a mantra if that's your jam. If you like to have a meditation in your class and you want people to recite a mantra during that meditation, you can have that also follow your theme. If you like to use mudras, so Heidi, explain what a mudra is. It's like a hand
Like
gesture,
a hand
right?
gesture, the ways that you can arrange your hands to create a specific intention or purpose.
Yes. So
For
you can
example,
also
like at
work
the end of
in.
class, when teachers often put your hands in like prayer at your heart center, Anjali
Mhm.
Mudra, that's
Yeah.
a like palm to palm at the center of your heart, and it has a specific intention.
Yeah, so you can definitely weave those in. We have lots of suggestions for that. And then, as well as your pranayama, which is your breath control. Different breath exercises can also function to drive the hammer, not drive the hammer, drop the hammer in your theme.
I was just going to say pranayama is the practice of noting the energy that is left behind in your body from specific styles of breath, right? So it's,
Ooh, I haven't heard it that way.
yeah, like prana is the energy that is
Yeah.
in our body, and yama, right, is the restraint, actually, right? Our restraint system, yamas. So it's the
Yeah, so I just
restraint.
always thought of it as just breath control, but I like what you said about like the energy that's left behind.
Yeah, pretty cool, right?
Mhm.
And you
Yummy.
can tie in that energy to your theme.
Yes.
Cool. Carry
Cool,
on.
I love
Sorry.
that. Yeah, no, and then a specific meditation, if you like to guide your meditations in class versus just allowing people to have space to meditate, either way could actually work. It depends on what your theme is, but you can guide a specific meditation that follows your theme and even incorporates your thematic phrase.
So you're gonna offer all this in your pretty inspo sheet that you make for every episode, right? Options.
Yes. So every episode, I will create an inspo sheet. It'll have a peak pose, a mudra, a mantra, pranayama that fits the theme. I'll have a few playlist song suggestions, and they're pretty much just in bullet points. So you'll be able to look at this one page sheet and have basically a whole class plan. There's also a little space for notes, so if you don't like what we came up with or you just have different ideas, you can write your own stuff in there and boom, you have a class.
Yeah, and you don't have to use it all. Every class does not need to have a pranayama, a meditation, a mantra, a mudra, a quote. Like that's a little overkill, right? But we're giving you
Yes.
suggestions. And you could use the same theme then using different supportive things throughout it. So it feels like a different class to your students, even though you're teaching the same concept. So that keeps it fresh in different ways too.
Absolutely. And if you teach at multiple studios or if you
Mm,
teach like online and then in person, you can use that same theme. And so that way it really gets driven into your head as well. And you get more comfortable with it, but you're able to use different aspects like mudras and mantras and pranayamas in different audiences.
for sure. And I think that I just want to make sure people know that this episode and the one before do not have inspo sheets. We're just keep teaching you the content and who we are. Starting our next episode next week, that's when you will find your first inspo sheet. And where do you find that, Farron? How do you find our inspo sheet?
Our inspo sheet will be delivered directly to your inbox. I'll give you the web address where you will go to find that episode. It'll include the show notes. And then at the bottom of that website will be a little box that says, put your email in here, and you'll get the inspo sheet for this specific episode, this specific theme. And once you put your email in, you'll get that delivered right into your inbox. It's downloadable, so you can have it on your phone. You can download it to your computer. You can print it out. You can do whatever you want with it.
Share it.
Yeah.
Share it
Just
amongst
share
yoga
it.
teachers at your studio. Post it on your social media so that way other people can see these beautiful. Just tag us so people can find us. That'd be nice. Um,
Yeah.
but we want to make this easy for you. So easy. And underneath the show on Spotify or whatever channel that you're listening on, it should have the link to our website to be able to find this information. Okay.
Absolutely. And then just another reminder that these episodes that we're recording right now, these introductory episodes, these are longer, but we are going to deliver all this information on these themes in 10 minutes or less because it's intended to be used on your drive to work as you're going to go teach this theme. You can download the inspo sheet on your phone when you get to the studio, and then you can have it for reference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're just a little wordy on these first two, but we promise to keep our promise to you and keep ourselves shorter. So
Yes.
I'll try and be quick here. I want to talk really briefly about some common pitfalls to avoid with theming. I talked about some of them earlier, right? There's these common mistakes when theming yoga classes that we make as teachers, such as overloading with too many themes in one class. right? It's so tempting and you have so much to share that you can't narrow it down. That becomes
Mhm.
overwhelming for students and they don't know what you're teaching them. Another pitfall is failing to revisit the theme during the practice, introducing the theme at the beginning and never ever coming back to it again. There's no connection to it. We need to revisit, right? 7 times, repetition.
Drop the hammer.
Drop it, drop it, drop it. Sandwiching, I think I made that up. I don't know if that's a thing other than what you eat, but I think about sandwiching like we have the bread on either end, and then there's like the delicious stuff on the inside. So if the beginning of your class is one piece of bread and the end of your class when they're coming into their closing breath or however you choose to close your class happens, those are the pieces of bread. There's like this giant deliciousness, whether it's like tofurkey or actual turkey or peanut butter and jelly, whatever it is that you want on the inside, that's your class. That's the substance of your class. And when you this pitfall of sandwiching, forgetting to sandwich the theme without meaningful content in between is like you only do the bread. You just do,
Who
you know,
wants bread? That's not even a sandwich. That's just bread.
I mean, I do like bread, but I do prefer it with something else.
If
Even
you're
like an
expecting a sandwich and you just get bread, oh my God, I'd be so disappointed.
That's right. You need your thematic through line to anchor yourself to as you're teaching as the delicious stuff in between your bread. And don't talk to me about open face sandwiches, avo toast. I'm not talking about that. Like you need both pieces of bread here. Okay.
Imagine you just let your class go. You're like, namaste. And they're like, wait, what?
Right? Oh my
Where's the other
God.
piece of bread?
Where's the rest of my bread? What was I namasteing? Oh, so don't make that pitfall. Don't forget the rest of your sandwich. You need bread on both sides and the filling on the
The
inside.
filling.
Oh, so yummy. Now I'm hungry. All right. Another pitfall is lacking confidence or connection with the theme and the students that are in the room, right? Just sharing something that we share with you without actually connecting it to yourself. That's going to not land with your students as deeply. And if you know what you want to say, but you don't sound confident, when you sort of have a lot of upspeak and you end your sentences with a question with the tone of your voice, or if you're super quiet about it, or you're giggling or like very, very fidgety with your body, that's
Yeah.
showing that you don't have confidence and your students are going to.
Imagine you stand up in front of your class and you're like, so I think I'm teaching from the sutras, and it's like 1.1, and it's something about yoga in the now. And so yoga happens right now. And then you just like teach your class, and they're just like, what?
How else
Like,
could
do
you
you
say
even know
that,
what you're
Farin?
teaching?
Show me how else you could say it. How else would you say it so that way you actually show that confidence and connection?
Confidently? You'd be like,
Yes.
hi, I'm Farron, and I am teaching on Yoga Sutra 1.1, Atta Yoga Nusasanam, which means yoga is now. Today in class, we will be coming back to the present moment, reminding us to calm our monkey mind. We're not going to be swinging from thought to thought. We're going to continue to practice being in the now because yoga happens right now.
Yes, confident. You guys hear the difference? I hear it. You got to own it. You got to stand with 2 feet on the ground, take a full breath in before you go. Slow your roll. Don't talk too fast. When you're talking too
Yes,
fast, you lack that connection with your students as well. Follow our template, right? Stay on topic. Less is more. Say less with more of an impact, more of a punch. Make sense?
absolutely.
All right, Farron. So, chromatic yoga combines learning and practices for increased awareness and understanding. Our classes that we teach, that were trained to us from chromatic yoga style, cover physical techniques for well being and inspirational themes for life on and off the mat. And the latter is what we're focusing on here. How we can make our classes irresistible to our students is not just delivering this really well thought out and well planned physical practice, but it's tying that to these inspirational themes to give you a richer, more meaningful life off of your mat as well. And we do that through this thematic through line. And
Yes.
it's,
Have you ever taken a class where like you're crying in Shavasana because the theme is so good? It's so powerful. It just resonated with you.
yeah, sometimes I do that. I'm not a huge crier in the class, but like later on my drive home, I'll be like, ugh. Like you just feel
It
gutted.
hits you.
Good
Yes.
gutting though, right?
And I'm not saying that I want you to make your students cry in class. Like, that's not the point. But it's just even more powerful when you have some type of emotional response or like a mental shift that happens in your class. And that's not going to come completely through the physical practice. So that's why this having a thematic through line is so important to really drill it down, connect the ancient yogic texts, which teach us how to be a yogi, and using that in modern day times when it's really difficult to find that yoga mindset and be a true yogi and like follow this yogic path when we're surrounded by, technology, modern day stuff, problems, like real world blah.
Busy, heavy stuff. But this is why we came up
Yes.
with the same theme, Weaver, because we were thinking about how you want to connect the ancient yogic texts, in particular the sutras, and the word sutra translates to
Thread. It's
thread, and
beautiful.
it's really beautiful, and you want to weave this thread throughout your entire class to create a beautiful tapestry of an experience for your student that is unforgettable and transformational. And you do this,
Absolutely.
you do this by connecting what you're wanting to share with your students to the real text, the real depth underneath, but making it understandable for us in today's day and age and where we live. And that might look different where I live on the East Coast versus you on the West Coast versus you yoga teacher who might live in another country or in a different place. And it might look different to us, but if we follow the same structure, we can weave this tapestry together and create a huge impact for our students, whether or not they cry at the end of class.
Yeah, it's not the goal. It's not the goal. But if it happens, it's really cool.
Exactly. So, yoga teachers, we've really tried to make you understand our structure for delivering themes, for the importance of dropping the hammer and repeating it over and over, sometimes in the same way, sometimes in different ways throughout class, about taking our teachings, consolidating them to make a concise, clear point, and knowing that they're going to want to come back for more so you can give them other teachings. You don't have to shove them all into one class, right? There's so much opportunity for
Yes.
more. Yeah, there's no
And
scarcity.
that
It's
you're giving them the full sandwich, remember, that you're not just like
yes.
dropping a theme and then forgetting about it.
Yeah, put it on the bread on both sides and shove it in the middle. So this was it. This is what we wanted to share. We want you to understand the structure because next week we are diving in. You can always refer back to this episode for guidance on the structure of weaving a theme into your class, but 10 minutes or less, here we go. It's going to happen. And you're going to be able to apply the insights from this episode to the teachings that we go through with you each week and let that help create the yoga teacher that you want to be.
Absolutely. And the yoga teacher that we want you to be. We're so confident that you're going to be confident by using these themes and using these yogic texts to deepen the practice for your students. And you're not just coming up with some theme out of thin air and just winging it because that never feels good. So we have all the confidence in you that this is going to be amazing. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast, share it with other yoga teachers.
Follow us on social media, right? And then reach out to us, whether it's through our Instagram or our Facebook. Links are below. We want to hear from you. How does this land? Is this how you attempt to theme your classes? Is it not? Have you tried this and it's worked for you? Have you never thought to try it at all? Do you like to theme? Do you want to share with us, and that will help us guide what more of what you need as well. We want to engage with you because community is everything to Farin and I.
Absolutely. There's nothing better than that connection with your students. And now, as yoga teachers, you're also our students.
You are. Join us, listen to us, come and sit with us, drink your coffee, drink your tea, and you can always refer back to this episode if you're unsure of the structure of your theme and to remind you of your inspiration on why to weave a theme through your classes anyway.
All right. So next week we'll be talking about Yoga Sutra 1.1.
Yeah.
Yoga is now.
You got a tasting today, but next week, join us.
Next week you get the full thing and the inspo sheet.
It's pretty. Let us know what you think of it. So until next time,
we weave you in peace.